Literally translated, twin spark means double spark. This is what Alfa Romeo named its revolutionary new four-cylinder engine in 1987. The Italians introduced it as part of the modernization of the famous Alfa Romeo 75, which used the concept of a gearbox combined with a rear differential. Later the engine was prepared for transverse placement under the bonnet of the Alfa 164 and, from 1992, the Alfa 155, technically related to the original Fiat Tipo. But the twin spark we are talking about is a completely different unit. In fact, it is the second generation of the engine of the same name. What it shares with the original from the 80s is its cubic capacity in 2 spark plugs per cylinder, for a total of 8. While the original twin spark engine had 8 identical spark plugs, the second generation has 4 regular-sized plugs and the rest are significantly smaller, as if they were borrowed from a motorcycle engine. To be precise, the large candle has a diameter of 14 mm, and the small one is only 10 mm. Among the reasons for this diversity is limited space, since, unlike the first generation, 4 valves are used per cylinder. Why did designers start using 2 spark plugs on one cylinder instead of 1? The main goal is to protect the expensive catalyst in the event of ignition failure on a specific cylinder. The second-generation twin-spark engine dates back to those times when electronics were not yet able to determine which cylinder was not working and, accordingly, the fuel supply to the injector did not stop. Each cylinder has its own ignition coil, which is mounted on a large spark plug. The coil has another, so-called parallel output, connecting it to a small spark plug, but of a different one, a parallel cylinder. So, the first cylinder is connected to the fourth, the second to the third, since the engine operates in the usual 1-3-4-2 order of a 4-cylinder engine. If a spark plug is lit in the first cylinder at the moment of compression, classical ignition, then in a parallel cylinder, in this case the fourth, a small spark plug for exhaust gases, is simultaneously fired. But this is only true for engines assembled before 2003. Later the timing of the candles changed. They began to work only on the compression stroke. I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro. The second advantage of dual ignition is faster combustion of the mixture, especially as engine speed increases, and a lower thermal load on the pistons. Theoretically, the temperature is better distributed. Alfa Romeo for the second-generation twin-spark engines prescribed replacement of spark plugs every 100,000 kilometers. In this case, it is necessary to change both spark plugs, and not just the large ones. The second-generation twin spark, unlike its predecessor, is equipped with a timing belt. Initially, replacement was recommended after 100,000 kilometers, but subsequently the interval was reduced to 60,000 kilometers. The reason is premature wear of the belt and its breakage. The smaller 1.4, 1.6 and 1.8-liter versions have only one belt driving both camshafts. The 2-liter version received 2 additional balancer shafts, which have their own, narrower belt. Mechanics call it a time bomb. Although the manufacturer prescribes replacing the belt every 120,000 kilometers, it is still better to update it after 60,000 kilometers. There have been cases where the balancer shaft belt breaks and then gets caught under the main timing belt. As a result, the valves met the pistons. Only 1.4-liter engines and a weak 1.6 version with a return of 105 horsepower did not use a variable valve timing system. All other units were equipped with a phase regulator, variator, of the intake camshaft. At times the twin spark starts to sound like a diesel. The source of noise is the phase variator. The reason is oil deposits that do not allow turning to the extreme positions. Fiat and Alfa Romeo specialists can clean the CVT, eliminating the need to replace it. Starting problems: the starter turns, but the engine does not start, arise due to a faulty position sensor of one of the camshafts. The main problem with these engines is the need for delicate handling. Special care is required for long-term survival. The greatest harm is caused by too early loads after a cold start. Those who start turning the engine when it is not warmed up may even have their pistons burst. They tend to expand faster when heated than a cast iron block. The predecessor used an aluminum block. The pistons are installed in the cylinders with a relatively large clearance. This is why these engines rev up so easily and consume a fair amount of oil. The oil reserve of a 2-liter unit is 4.4 liters. If the engine uses up all the oil, it will end up with a broken block, which means the end of the engine. As a rule, the liners of the third and fourth cylinders wear out first, since they are located further from the oil pump. The twin spark engine requires a special approach from its owner. The oil, depending on operating conditions, should be changed every 5 to 10,000 kilometers or once a year. The most suitable is Silnia Racing SAE 10W60, but it is expensive. In any case, SAE 5W30 and 0W30 are not suitable. They are completely unsuitable for lubricating an Italian engine. The fact that twin spark engines have a very bad reputation means that cars with this engine are significantly cheaper than Alfa Romeo's 6-cylinder engine, which has a better reputation. The price difference, for example, for an Alfa Romeo GTV or Spider can be more than double in favor of the 6-cylinder unit. Where can you find twin spark? In models 145, 146, 147, 155, 156 and 166. And, of course, under the hood of the GTV and its open Spider version. The last owner of the unique engine was the GT Coupe, derived from 147, but only with 1.8. The twin spark engine, thanks to the GT Coupe, lasted until 2011 when Euro 5 emission standards came into force.